Hey everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. We're gonna have fun today because I thought we would talk about automatic turntables. Now, this is specifically for people new to the hobby. So if you're new to vinyl and you're like, what is an automatic turntable? Like, how does it work? What are the benefits? What it can and can't do? I'm gonna tell you all about it with some visual demonstrations. It's gonna be a lot of fun. You're not gonna wanna miss this.
Welcome to Record-ology.
Okay, so if you are new to vinyl, let me just say welcome. You found a safe place. Hit subscribe. We embrace the entry level like nobody else does on YouTube. So you may have heard of an automatic turntable. What is that exactly? I'll get to that in a second. Let me first back up by saying when you start down this hobby, there's two tracks you can follow. The nostalgic track, which is like suitcase players, all-in-one nostalgic looking, vintage looking systems that are lower sound quality. Not necessarily are they going to do any damage. We've done a lot of shows about that, but they're going to wear records faster. The sound is going to be harsh. A lot of it has to do with the cartridges that are used. That's a separate show for a separate day. Then you can go down the other track, which is turntables and systems that are really designed for sound. So it's function over form, as it were, and that's where the automatics come in. You're not going to find an automatic on a suitcase player and all-in-one. You're going to find it in these types of machines here. These are a few of my automatics from my collection, and we've got a few different types here. I'm not going to really review any of these in particular. They've all had their show, at least one so far. You'll notice the LP3 for my old-timers here is not here. Don't worry, still have it. Definitely not getting rid of that anytime soon, but I'm running out of counter space. I can't put all of the automatics out. So here are 6. And yeah, it's a great option. And they do a lot more than you might think they do. But what is an automatic turntable? Well, as the name implies, it functions automatically, which means you can push a single button and it'll start playing the record. Then when it's done, it'll automatically bring the tone arm home and shut itself off. Or you can hit stop and it'll do the same thing. So it functions completely automatic. Now what's interesting is from a cost standpoint, an automatic turntable isn't the most expensive kind of turntables. In fact, the higher up you go, the more manual they get. So what's really cool is if people want an automatic, they don't have to spend an arm and a leg. They can get into an arm and a leg. They can get into an automatic for an entry-level price. In fact, one of these turntables here is my #1 most recommended turntable for beginners. And it's not this one. This isn't a bad unit, but this actually isn't a fully automatic unit. This is a semi-automatic unit. You may be saying to yourself, okay, semi-automatic, manual, automatic. What different types are there? And what is the difference between them? At one end of the spectrum, you have a fully manual turntable. That means that you have to cue the tone arm up. You have to drop it or put it in the position you want on the record. And when the record's done, it'll just keep spinning. Nothing shuts off by itself, and then you have to go over and pick up the stylus, pick up the needle, and put it back in its cradle. You have to do everything by hand. The next level up is what's called an auto stop. And what that means is when the record reaches you have to start the record manually by queuing up the needle to the proper place, the beginning or whatever song you want. But it will, when it gets to the end, it'll actually stop the record. That's called an auto stop. Then the next level up is what's called a semi-automatic, like the one we just looked at. And that one, you have to start it manually, but it will come all the way home and return the tone arm automatically. That's a semi-automatic. And then finally, you've got an automatic that starts and stops automatically, and it does everything. There is one step beyond a full automatic, and that's an automatic changer. Behold the modern marvel of engineering that is the automatic changer. Listen, if you want a turntable that does it all, literally, an automatic changer does it all. And I want to kind of go back and reemphasize something I said earlier, and that is that you don't need a ton of money to have an automatic. This was like, I think, $15. This is a higher end variant of a common BSR turntable. This is a Glenburn made in the UK. Changers were very, very common in the 60s and 70s. It's what most consumer level turntables were because it focused on offering convenience, because one of the things that a record forces us to do, if it's not an automatic or if it's not a changer, is to get up and deal with the record every 18 to 20 minutes when it plays through one side. So this solves the problem of, I want to, attend to my party. I want to not worry about the music. I just want it to play. And that is to play through a whole stack of records. You get a couple hours of playtime in so doing. Again, I'm not going to go into a super deep review on any of this stuff, but essentially you can stack 5 or 6 records on here. It'll drop one at a time, play through, bring the arm back, drop another record, play through, bring the arm back, drop another record, et cetera, until it gets through the stack. It works on these large records. It works on small records. There's adapters, so you can use records with large holes. This particular one is 4 speeds, so you can do 16 RPM if you want to put your Sebergs on and really get some hours and hours of music. 33 for, common LPs, 45s, and even 78s as well. This does it all. And something of note is that they are not making new changers anymore. You cannot buy a new record changer. You have to go vintage, which is not a terrible thing in my estimation, because they're plentiful. You can go out there. This was like $15, $16. They're, relatively easy to find. When I got into this, I had no inclination at the outset that I would want to go down the turntable, high fidelity route whatsoever, which I eventually did. That's my preference now. If you look at my early videos, we did a lot of wooden and suitcase player stuff. Still do from time to time. Don't have anything against those machines at all. But ultimately, I just wanted to get the best sound quality out of vinyl. And in order to do that, you need to go the component route. You need a turntable with a magnetic cartridge, irregardless of whether or not it's manual or automatic. I personally like the added level of an automatic because I work from home and I like to have music playing in the back, and I don't want to have to keep an eye on the turntable at all times. And in fact, I've got another automatic changer in my office that I use. It's the Technics. I use that. It's SLB5 specifically, in case you're wondering. I use that almost every single day. Put a stack of records on there and I work throughout the day, and I don't have to worry about it for 2-3 hours. Flip the stack, get another 2-3 hours worth of music out of it. But yeah, this may look confusing, and it's not that bad. I mean, basically, you've got start, stop, and auto. You can manually cue it, which is something I'm going to talk about in a minute. But let's go ahead and spin it up just for the fun of it. I don't have any speakers or anything hooked up to this particular unit. But let's just, as simple as flipping that little switch. The older units like these types of BSRs and the Glenburns use these little paddle switches. And it does that for the speed select as well as the start and stop. And then there's another one up here for the size. And the reason why there is a switch for the size, and it's 12, 7, and 10 inches are the 3 choices, is that it needs to know where to automatically drop this. So if I put this down to 7, and let's just say for the sake of argument that I've got a 7-inch record on there, I don't want it to drop the needle where it just dropped it. I want it to drop it at the beginning of the smaller record. So now that I've got it set, it's going right out to where the beginning of that 7-inch record would be. So let's say that I want to be done with this record now, and I just wanted to listen to 10 seconds of audio or one song, whatever, and I just have to flip this switch right here to auto, and now it's going to come home and start to play that record again. Now you may be saying to yourself, when you hit stop or you tried to switch it off, why did it start playing the record again? Well, it all has to do with this thing. This is a stabilizing arm called an overarm. And when you've got a stack of records up here, its job is, one, to hold those records, in a decent non-wobbling state to stabilize them. And you'll notice it went pretty far down when I put it over here with no records on top. That senses the fact that it doesn't have any records in play. It knows that this is the last record. In fact, as it goes through the stack of records, it slowly drops until it gets to the bottom position, and it tells the record player, hey, there's nothing else playing on here. So now, if I actuate this to the auto mode, it would bring it back home. Or if it's just not being attended to and the record gets to the end and it realizes there's no more records on the top of this, there's no more records stacked up, it says, well, this is the last record. We need to shut the unit off and bring the tone arm home. So as the stylus hits the run out groove, it senses that and brings it home. And this time it's going to shut it off. Again, the reason why it's doing it this time compared to last time is this overarm is in place and it knows that there's no more records to be played. With it in this position, like I had it before, there could be more records. So it just started playing the record. It went on to what's called repeat mode. It just keeps playing, keeps playing, keeps playing. Now, if you've ever seen a pocket watch, I said this on the live the other night on TikTok, but if you've ever seen a pocket watch and all the gears and springs and levers and switches, that's not unlike what an automatic changer looks like underneath. It's a like I said, it's a marvel of engineering. It looks fairly complicated to the eye up here. It's really not. You'll get the hang of it. Don't worry about it. There's plenty of videos, most of them by me, I hope, out there that will explain how to do it. But if you look under the plinth, under the hood as it were, it's amazing what makes this tick. So this is sort of the king of turntables in my opinion. I think they're fantastic. However, a lot of people don't go the auto changer route. They don't like stacking their records, and that's a separate subject for another day. I say that a lot. I go over 1,000 videos now, so I've got videos on everything and so much more to come. But a lot of people just like to go with a non-changer automatic. So let's look at one of those. In case you're wondering why none of these turntables I'm showing right now have a dust cover, it's just because I removed them. It makes a lot more sense from a filming standpoint, although it makes them look even more utilitarian, very boring looking as it were. This right here, my friends, is my number one most and highly recommended turntable for beginners, and more so a year ago than today because of cost, supply and demand, and the cost of logistics transport from China to the United States and other factors have made all record player prices go through the roof. And the LP60X from Audio-Technica is no different. This is the Bluetooth variant. That's why it was flashing blue there for a minute. This turntable is a full automatic, and it is the bottom of the line from a cost standpoint from Audio-Technica, but not a quality bottom of the line, a cost bottom of the line. This is a fantastic high quality turntable that will last you for years. And the reason why I endorse it, but not quite as wholeheartedly, is a year and a half, 2 years ago, before, I shouldn't say a year ago, it was more like 3 years ago, 2019, this thing would cost $99. Today, this will cost $179. So the cost is just way more. At $99, this was an actual steal. It was ridiculous what good of a value this was. It's also a good illustrative turntable to talk about the functionality of a single disc automatic. Now, when we get into these types of automatic, these are being made today. Changers, not so much, but automatics, absolutely. Single disc automatics, absolutely. So in addition to losing the ability to play a stack of records, we lose a couple other things. The most notable is the fact this is only 2 speeds. Unlike the Glenburn that was 4 speeds, this now will only do 33 and 45. So that limits the kind of records that you're going to play. But most people are playing, 33 RPM LPs, 45 RPM singles. They're not playing Seeberg records at 16 and 2/3 RPM. They're not playing 78s. That's the bulk of the consumer market. So this meets the needs of most people. And it does a good job. A lot of similar functionality. I wanted to start with a more complicated Glenburn so that when we looked at this, it was like, oh, this is easy. So some of the same functionality, the size select, we're going to tell it that we're going to play a 12-inch record, which, where did I put my 12-inch record? Okay, I got my 12-inch record right here, and I'm going to put it on right there. I told it was 12 inches. I'm going to set the speed to 45. Something you might not have noticed, but the old timers will have noticed, is the fact that the buttons on these, a lot of these single disc automatics are in the same spot because they share a lot of common inner workings. These are commonly made by, a handful of manufacturers, even for different brands. For instance, the Audio-Technica LP60 series is made by Handpin Turntables of China, the same company that makes the Crosley T400 automatic, and the Audio-Technica LP120 series manuals. They make a lot of turntables. So there are shared components, even cross-brand. So we've set the size, we've set the speed, we've got start, stop, and cue. And cue basically raises or lowers, and you can also manually raise and lower, which is another point I want to make. Some people may say, well, I want to cue my records manually. I don't want an automatic. Or I want to cue my records, manually sometimes and automatically sometimes. Well, automatic turntables function as manual turntables as well. So let's say I don't push any of those buttons. I can still place my stylus just like a manual turntable. And when I'm done, I can bring it back and it'll shut it off. So I don't lose functionality by having an automatic. I gain functionality. And added, I don't have to deal with a tiny queuing lever back there or even manually queuing. I can use this queuing switch, which makes it nice and handy to gently raise and lower the stylus to the place that you want, just like a manual. It's very, very cool. The one caveat is you lose the ability when you have an automatic to manually have the record just play to infinity, which I don't know anybody that will miss that because an automatic will always auto return. So I guess it's going to be a semi-automatic, not a full manual, but you still get that full manual control. And that is something that's fantastic. The next thing you may be saying is, well, an automatic, if they're not on higher end turntables, it must be, it must impede the sound quality. It must, not be as good. And I would argue against that as well because these have, magnetic phono cartridges. Some automatics even have removable and upgradable head shell cartridges. This is not one of them. The LP3, the big brother to this unit, is. But the other thing I want to talk about is what's making all the automatic functions work. And for that, we need to look under the hood. Okay, so if I remove the felt platter mat here and I take the platter off as well, it says belt driven. Automatics, I think, are exclusively belt driven. I don't know if there's a direct drive automatic. Let me know down in the comments, more experienced people or people that have been around this for a long time, the many, many people that know way more than I do. But I don't think that there were any direct drive automatics. All right, we're going to remove the platter, and this is what makes it all work, kind of. These gears are not driving the turntable, okay? These are on the receiving end of the energy that's created from the spinning platter. The platter is spun with the motor and the belt that's in contact with the bottom of the platter. As we look at the bottom of the platter right there, you can see the sub platter. That's this inner ring where the belt is. The motor spins the belt, which spins the platter. This is what's driving everything. And when this is in contact, some of these actually have this gear right here, this plastic gear. They actually have this gear on the bottom of the platter itself. But what happens is this rotating is what tells these cogs and gears what to do. So the turntable is being controlled by the switches and relays that we have on the unit, which are mechanical switches that put different camshafts and different levers into different positions so that as the platter rotates, it engages different functions. That was a very 30,000 foot flyby over how these work. But I want you to know that the mechanics of an automatic turntable are not hampered by its functionality, if that makes any sense. So if we had a belt-driven turntable like this without any of this, it wouldn't be any better because it was missing the automatic functionality. Because once the platter is in motion and once it's started playing, once the tone arm drops, once the music is coming out, there is no drag introduced by any of this. It's completely free spinning and independent of all of this stuff. And it will not impede the sound. It doesn't slow it down. It doesn't mess up the speed consistency. It completely disengages, and that motor is able to regulate the speed and everything it needs to of the platter, and therefore the music that we hear is pitch and audio and music just fine. But you will notice that if you're playing a record and let's say it's the middle of the song and you hit the stop button, as soon as you hit the stop button, you'll hear the pitch lower just a tad before that tone arm lifts off. That's because at that moment we do have additional drag introduced. As soon as you tell it to bring the tone arm home, now the motor is spinning the platter that is now engaging the cog and the cam gear. This is a cam wheel, so see this little channel in here. this is like kind of like imagine like a maze on the other side of this, and the position of the rotation of this cam gear will dictate the position of parts, and that tells it what to do. But what I'm saying is, once it starts engaging the auto return functionality, now the motor is powering these things. But it doesn't matter because you're done listening at that point and the tone arm is lifted up. And most of the time, the tone arm is lifted up at the end of a song once it's silent. But if you were to hit stop or return when it was in the middle of a song for half a second, you might hear a pitch drop. But that, my friends, is how these things work. And they are a great option, and I would highly recommend them. All right, my friends, and that is going to do it. Always would love to hear your comments down below. If you wouldn't mind leaving those a thumbs up, a follow, I guess it's a subscribe here on YouTube. I was doing some TikTok recently, did a TikTok live the other night. Thanks to everybody who joined us. And it's kind of hard adjusting the terminology over there. So I'm kind of bouncing back and forth. So you'll forgive me for that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, guys. But that's going to do it for today. So happy record hunting, and we'll see you next time.